All right, good afternoon. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to a quick PCA update on this post-election hangover Friday we have. So we're going to go through some updates for you all, talk a little bit about the election, but also some other activities that we got going on. There's a little bit of a fury of activity that's going on over several weeks, so we wanted to be able to go ahead and talk about it today and get everybody up to speed on everything that's going on as we head into the holiday season. So on that note, Joshua Bursky, Glenn Loop, our government affairs team extraordinaires on here with me. So Josh, I'm going to throw it over to you and you can kick us off and take it away.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, this is a little bit of election update, a little bit of a general government affairs update, but I want to start off by thanking all of our veterans out there on Veterans Day. I know that a lot of the cigar lounges are doing promotions and things to honor our veterans. So hopefully any of our active service people and veterans are able to enjoy a cigar at their local lounges. Getting into the election side of things, it is, pretty interesting. We're still waiting now that Tuesday the polls closed. Ballots are still being counted in Arizona, Nevada, California. There's been no official breakdown on the House, Senate, or even the governor's races. We can tell you what we do know right now, and that is that the official breakdown for the U.S. Senate of called races so far are 48 Republican, 46 Democrat. Of course, you need 51 for the majority. That has four outstanding races, one of which we know in Georgia is going to a runoff election. In the House of Representatives, the breakdown is 211 Republican, 193 Democrat. You need 218 for a majority, and 404 of 435 have been called thus far there. As it relates to the governor's mansion, you have 24 Republican, 23 Democrat, 33 of 36 have been called so far, so 3 available. I think one thing for sure that we have noticed is that it's a lot closer than what was expected, than what a lot of the pundits have called for, talking about red waves or a change in power. It's still very likely that the House of Representatives becomes Republican control, but by a very thin margin. No matter what happens, between now and next week, when the remainder of the elections are called, you will have very, very close margins, which it will be a challenge for both parties to set an agenda. I think that because you didn't have a red wave, the Democratic Party that currently controls both chambers of the U.S. Congress and the White House may try a end of the year package of sorts of some of their priorities. They are a little bit more emboldened than they were, having expected some losses, which didn't, happen in many cases. So it is a wait and see game for that. I think, states, you had some switches. Glenn, I don't know if you want to highlight any states in particular that are of noteworthy as we kind of still sift through, but from the federal perspective, not a huge swing in either direction.
No, honestly, I think on the state level, it's going to be a lot of status quo. Even those places where there's been a slight adjustment in party, I really don't anticipate a huge philosophical shift on the issues pertaining to premium handmade cigars and pipe tobacco in any state capital in the country. And I'm willing to be held to that discussion and prediction this time when we give a post session wrap up next March and April. Nevada is interesting in this regard in terms of too close to call type of thing. We have some tax policy issues that may come up in that state legislature, but most of all, scanning the nation, I think the governor's offices and the state legislatures are going to be virtually status quo. Now, we can run through some of the issues during the course of this discussion if you want to, but some of the predictable measures that we know that we're sitting good on in terms of existing state legislatures and ones that'll be changing hands in January. Tax reform in Virginia, flavor ban proposal in Maine, the flavor ban proposal in Colorado will still come down to the wire like it did this past year. Tax and licensing measures, local authority legislation in Kentucky, Oregon, pretty much status quo, predictability in that. We did get a message on a changing of the guard in Minnesota. We had this discussion during our Midwest lobbyist training call this week with retailers in that neck of the woods. We may see the tax cap on premium cigar measure by statute in Minnesota come under a greater level of threat, and that's something we need to prepare for. We'll have our ally in the legislature, Jim Nash, Representative Jim Nash, helping to defend the cause in Minnesota. And really, that's the only direct message I've received regarding a state legislative proposition that's relevant to us here at this tight juncture post-election.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things to mention, Glenn, is that in California, Prop 31, it was convenient when we were on our West Coast conference call and training, talking about that. There is a lawsuit that has already been filed by RJ Reynolds Company about the banning of flavored tobacco products in California. This was actually a little bit of a surprise for me. I know that all of us at PCA and a group of coalition, we were opposing the flavor ban itself, but with 60% reporting, this was a little closer than expected, considering that Michael Bloomberg dropped over $30 million supporting this, and you really didn't have opposition, from a lot of the major, bigger tobacco organizations fighting this. From an advocacy perspective, it's almost a 60-40 split for and against. So really, I think that's a testament to some of the work that the coalition was doing, and voters understanding that they don't really want to be told by government what they can and cannot do in this context.
I don't know, 60% is kind of a resounding measure. If I were predicting things just before that, I probably would have gone into the 60% direction because of one thing. That 60-40 split is the margin that the last tax increase passed in the state of California, when there was also a special referendum to increase taxes to pay for a plethora of state projects and healthcare and other related projects and initiatives that the governor wanted at that time. And that was also a 60-40 split. I mean, it's so dangerous when anything in any state is thrown to a referendum, much less a California where, Big Tobacco spent $21 million to get it put on the ballot in the first place, and then spent about $750,000 on the general election. So that had an impact. But I think what happened with Reynolds 24 hours after the referendum probably tells us what they were thinking. We're going to hold our powder and try to fight it out in the courts.
Yeah, which makes sense. I think, coming at it and having some messaging on it, though, would have been, and they did, there were other interests that were, encouraging people to vote no. I had thought it was going to be a 70-30 split, or 75-25 split. That was my anticipation there, given, California, some of the trends there. So,
I think the important message for our retail partners in California is now we can officially say the story's not over.
Yeah. I want to switch it back over to the federal stuff and Patrick. Obviously we did a lot of candidate recruitment or candidate meetings. Our political action committee was in full swing looking at our record and our track record. We actually performed very well, which we typically do. Premium Cigar Pack, only one loss so far, one still outstanding race. But we are a very small political action committee, but I feel confident that we were able to cultivate and further relationships of small business friendly members of Congress, this go around.
Yeah, Josh. I mean, going into Tuesday, Democrats were expecting to lose as many as 30 seats or more in the House of Representatives. And it didn't turn out that way. It's been kind of an interesting election to watch. What folks thought was going to be a red wave turned out to be more of a ripple. But nevertheless, in the House of Representatives, because of the way the rules of the House work, you only need one vote majority, and then you control everything. You control the committees, you can schedule, you control what bills get floor time and which ones don't. So there are still a little more than 20 outstanding races that need to be called in the House. So it by no means is official yet, but both sides of the folks that I'm keeping in touch with, in both the Republicans and in the House, still think that it will be a Republican-controlled House. But that margin has shifted pretty dramatically from like I said, upwards of 30 to now they're talking about 5 to 10.
Yeah.
So.
And our, you probably recall too, Patrick, 3-4 months ago, it was 60 votes they were anticipating. Then, recently 2-3 weeks ago, it was 30 seats. And now we're looking at that spread. But I think, one of the morals of the story, for our purposes, as well as Glenn's purposes at the state, we're a bipartisan organization. We support Republicans, we support Democrats. This go around, and it's public record. You can see which candidates that we supported. We did support a little bit more leaning towards Republican this go around, reflecting some of the legislative initiatives that took place in this Congress when you had the insertion of the tobacco tax equity provisions in the the Build Back Better Act. That was a call to arms for us. That was a huge challenge for our association, for the industry. And we don't want to have candidates that are out there touting tax increases, detrimental tax increases on our industry. So, that's why we are a fully transparent organization. We did support more Republicans this go around than Democrats. That could change, next cycle. We meet and have official meetings. There's the political side, which, this conversation is a little bit more political than we normally get into. But there's also the pragmatic policy and legislative. And when on the policy side, Patrick and I and Ryan and Glenn, we meet with just as many Democrats as we do Republicans, time in and time again. I think we're going to cross the 200 official congressional meeting threshold, which is a pretty much an even breakdown when it comes to those official meetings. Patrick, anything to add to that?
Well, I think the other thing to add is, in the Senate, it's been interesting because I think a lot of folks were anticipating that we'd have sort of a 50-50 Senate, or Democrats would hang on to the Senate. And that could still be the outcome. But it looks like on the Senate side, it's been a little bit more contentious than anticipated. We probably honestly won't know until possibly December. In Arizona, Senator Kelly is in the lead. His lead is slowly shrinking as they are continuing to count ballots. But right now he's still in the lead, and he may hang on to it. In Nevada, it's really a neck and neck race in Nevada, and that one will probably be called or go to a recount, or possibly go to a recount here in the next couple of weeks. And Georgia, like I said, Georgia requires, unique in the country in that it requires the winner to have a true majority vote. And so you got to have 50% of the vote plus one. And and without that, you go to an automatic or automatic redo, and that would happen in December of this year.
Yeah. And I think, we're going to be assessing and doing a full breakdown of, races that flip, new members of Congress. We'll have a new member of Congress orientation where we teach people about the ins and outs of premium cigar policy come January. We've already been updating and working on Cigar Action to, get additional materials there as we prepare for the new Congress and the new state legislative sessions. Glenn and I, and Patrick and Scott, we all took part in a series of regional trainings at the state level. We had, upwards of 75 retailers participate in those trainings. And, Glenn and I spoke after our training yesterday. I was amazed at how many new retailers we were able to meet in that. And it's funny because I think the first year that we did it, we had about 12 to 15 total that participated. So seeing that increased advocacy participation is really a good sign because we're going to have to be prepared for some new challenges that lie ahead. I want to shift gears a little bit from the election, unless Scott, Patrick, Glenn, if you have any final thoughts on the election, I want to talk about next week.
Not on the election, but regarding our regional training programs we just did last week and a half. Last night we had our first retailer from Alaska. That was exciting. I mean, it was so cool, and he's thinking about buying the shop, and he was enthusiastic, wanting to learn as much as he could about the politics of cigars, but it was wonderful to have someone from Alaska on our call.
Yeah. When we say, truly every 50 state represented by PCA, and every congressional district, it's important. And it's good that we're getting engagement from folks that we haven't interacted with in the past. And, we look forward to continuing to foster those relationships. If you were not able to attend the training, we definitely have a lot of the materials are going on cigaraction.org. And Glenn and I are happy to have one-off conversations or provide briefings on the fly as it relates to state advocacy. Next week is a big moment for our government affairs team, kind of the ending salvo to this year's advocacy activities, our end of the year policy summit. If you recall, last year we did it all virtual because of the pandemic. This year we're doing half in person and half virtual. Day one will be hosted at the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center. Patrick and I are working to get several speakers and panels for a briefing to talk to congressional staff. You'll actually have some of the new potential staff members for newly elected folks coming into town. It's a good way to, get people excited about premium cigars post-election. People have more time on their hands in Congress. So we'll be doing that session during the day. We're also doing a special invite-only reception, working with one of the embassies for some of the high-level policymakers and other folks of the international sphere. We are doing the International Policy Summit virtually, and I have people coming from all around the world. Glenn and Ryan have put a lot of work into this. That will be hosted virtually through StreamYard on the next Thursday from 1 to 5 p.m. So a 4-hour session. Some really, really great speakers again. We'll be recording that one and sending that to Capitol Hill as well. I know that you guys have a lot of new issues and panel discussions. Glenn, I don't know if you want to highlight some of the top level things there.
Well, we're excited to have Carlito Fuente join us for our panel on what the industry means to the Dominican Republic. And we'll also have representatives from the Pro Cigar organization to talk about the significance of the industry to the export market, what it means in terms of the national economy. Carlito, as always, will highlight what the industry means in a cultural, historic context, as well as an economic context. And in the afternoon session, we'll have Christian Aurora talking about these same types of issues from CLE Cigars, on a more global macro scale. So having Carlito and Christian join us for those panel discussions is a wonderful resource for the industry to learn from.
Absolutely. Patrick, on the domestic side, any highlights that you want to note?
Yeah, sure. So we're actually having as our keynote Congressman Dan Muser from Pennsylvania, who is the chairman of the Congressional Cigar Caucus. They've coalesced around 70 members of Congress who are all supporters of the industry, representing retailers and manufacturers in their congressional districts. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about, obviously I'm sure the election is sharp on his mind, and he's looking for ways in which they can start advancing positive legislation for the industry, so that we're not always having to focus on defense, but actually looking for ways that we can increase market opportunities and open up new markets for premium cigars and pipes.
Absolutely. Scott, any final thoughts on government affairs activities or anything that PCA is working on beyond government affairs?
No, we're just continuing to go as we go through the end of the year here. Josh and I will be on a session with the TTB talking about some of the changes that happened there. So we'll go ahead and digest that. We're one of the industry representatives that were invited to participate in that. So we'll make sure we distill that down and get that out to everybody for what that might mean. And so, yeah, we're just kind of looking to finish the year strong as we head into the state legislative sessions, as Glenn and Josh talked about, and making sure that we can kind of hit the ground running as we go through for everybody to start the year off right. So any questions, please always just feel free to reach out to us. Hit cigaraction.org. And for all retailers out there, please get your customers signed up at cigaraction.org. It's going to be a very busy legislative session for us. So the more that we have consumers and your customers engaged in cigaraction.org, the much more powerful we are, and the much more likely it is that we're going to prevail when it comes time for state legislative sessions.
Absolutely. And one other important thing to note, I know this happened last week and the week before, our team, Greg Zimmerman, our president, and I presented to the Reagan-Udall Foundation, offering recommendations for changes and improvements to the Center for Tobacco Products. Patrick was instrumental in drafting our comments. We provided, oral comments along with a panel as part of a 3-day, 10-hour information collection period. And then we also filed a written comment last week to their stakeholder portal. So that was another development that has occurred since our last government affairs update, and it's noteworthy. We kind of highlighted some of the top level things on a press release about the session. It's worth taking a look in. That dialogue will continue. One of the things that is, it's consistent. The Center for Tobacco Products and Food and Drug Administration, they are still our principal regulator. And as many changes that happen in the states and federally, we're still dealing with a lot of the same cast of characters over there. And, from our first interaction with Dr. Brian King, the new director, there was a bit of hope, positive interaction that, maybe he will understand the distinctions of premium cigars, and that message can take the day of the uniqueness of the product, user profile, and overall product category. So, well, we appreciate everybody, joining us this afternoon. As Scott mentioned, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be providing an update likely before the, December holiday season to kind of close things out. And if there's any timely updates between now and then, be on the lookout for some press releases. We have one going out next week, going about one of the focus areas of our government affairs department as we get more and more into the international sphere. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Veterans Day again. Thank you, everybody, for your service. And I hope everybody has a very safe and enjoyable weekend with a good premium cigar. Take care.